Almost. We almost saw something special tonight as J.A. Happ, a familiar name to Pirate fans, almost pitched a no-hitter. He does not, but he wins, and the Minnesota Twins win as they win Game 1 of this series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Pirates now 9-11 on the year, and after their winning streak, a little bit of winning series, we'll see if that can continue now, needing to take the next two against Minnesota this weekend to snag another series victory. This is Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live, and of course, a Pirates edition of the show. Again, the Pirates lose to Minnesota 2-0, now 9-11 on the year. Minnesota now 7-11 on the season. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and I am joined by our Alan Saunders to break down this game, be wowed by J.A. Happ, maybe the underrated performance of J.T. Brubaker, who doesn't get the love because he wasn't pitching a no-hitter, but another gem for himself. Jacob Stallings trying to bring respect to his last name in Pittsburgh, breaking things up and still helping out the team. And then maybe what else is going on with this lineup that once was great offensively this year, carrying the team to wins, but certainly not tonight. Alan, to get us started, J.A. Happ, a familiar name to Pirate fans, with Pittsburgh briefly, a journeyman around Major League Baseball, going back to the early days of a part of the Phillies 08 World Series team, and then now seems like just yesterday he was pitching in that Fall Classic, but basically 15 or so years later, 40 years old, going for a no-hitter, went pretty deep into that game as well as Jacob Stallings eventually broke things up. Before we get to the Pirates, he has to kind of be the story of this game. What did you make of J.A. Happ's performance? Did you ever expect this out of him? And were you watching this game thinking he's going to pitch a no-hitter, or did you think they would eventually get to him?
Well, I think after the sort of weird call against Defoe, I guess, what was that, about the fourth or the fifth inning?
Yeah, I think fourth, yeah.
After that, I thought, well, that's the kind of weird thing that if it goes – like, we'll talk about that forever, right? I mean, so I kind of felt like then there was a chance. I mean, look, 40-year-old pitchers that, you know, are run of the mill. I mean, Happ's a good pitcher. I don't want to denigrate him. He had like a 3.50 ERA last year. He's a career right under 4 ERA pitcher. He's got some good stuff still. I mean, he doesn't have the power that he used to have, but he's fine. He's better than all the Pirates pitchers. But like anytime you're getting no hit by a guy who's pushing 40, right, probably more about the guys hitting than it is the guy pitching.
Yeah, especially because the other pitchers to pitch no-hitters or a perfect game, for example, 40+, we're looking at Hall of Famers. We're looking at Nolan Ryan at 44 pitching a no-hitter. We're looking at Randy Johnson at 40 with the perfect game. So J.A. Happ doesn't fit that bill, but as you did say, let's give him the respect. He's actually pitched a pretty solid career. He's had a pretty solid career for a long time in Major League Baseball. Credit to him, mostly under a 4 ERA. Generally a 3 or 4 starter, though, if he's on a good team. You'd rather have him than the guy who's going to pitch tomorrow for the Pirates in terms of veterans who've been around a while. I'll segue and say that again. Mike Asti, Alan Saunders here on the Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame here on PSL. Now, J.A. Happ didn't pitch that no-hitter. Jacob Stallings eventually broke it up. He did get the victory. It would have kind of been ironic, a former Pirate pitcher throwing a no-hitter against the Pirates after a former Pirate pitcher leaving the team after last year, throwing a no-hitter, first for the Padres in their franchise history, and Joe Musgrove earlier in the season. But that also shows the story that doesn't have to be a Hall of Famer to throw no-hitters. They can also be middle-of-the-road pitchers that have that special day. But on the flip side for Pittsburgh, because we also got to be fair here, this is Pirates postgame. He's the Pirates pitcher. He has been dealing this season more consistent than anybody else, and that includes J.A. Happ with his no-hit bid. It is J.T. Brubaker, who, again, goes deep into a game, goes 7, doesn't get this victory, obviously, because the offense doesn't support and they end up losing 2-0. He was going against the guy throwing a no-hitter, but only a couple runs allowed for him. A solid day, 2 runs of 5, I believe. Another solid game for him. His ERA continues to be below 2 all year. Really ace stuff to this point. I even threw the joke tweet out there that he might be that unicorn, rare Pirates pitcher to reach his peak with the Pirates. And if he would actually be better leaving Pittsburgh, you're looking at Sandy Koufax based on how he's pitching now. But what do you make out of JT Brubaker, and do you continue to expect this? Because obviously we're a little into the season now, but it's still early, and I don't know if anyone expected this level pitching. He's clearly pitching at an all-star level, if not even more, at this point. One of the better pitchers in baseball based on the numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pitching really well. I think he's pitching with a little bit more confidence than he ever has in his career. He's an interesting guy because he was he wasn't one of these can't miss prospects. He wasn't one of the Tyones, the Coles, the Glasnows that the Pirates have had over the years, but he was a really strong prospect coming up. And he had some unfortunate timing on some injuries, and it didn't really click for him. The first time he got to AAA, he was okay, and then he got hurt. And last year was, kind of a messy year, right? I mean, nobody really did well last year. ERA up around 5. The FIP suggested it should have been more like 4, but, just not anything that anybody was looking to build around, right? But if you look back in his numbers, there's potential there. And I think he's always had pretty good stuff. He has a nice deep repertoire. I like that about him. It feels like he has command of a number of pitches. And I think the thing you're seeing from him is, a lot of the two things that I think young pitchers struggle with is what to do when you don't have your best stuff. I think everybody struggles with that coming up. And then another thing some young guys struggle with is, okay, I have my very best stuff today. How do I dominate instead of just putting up a good start? And he had really, really good stuff today, left a couple over the plate, gave up a couple of solo home runs. I can't even call one of them over the plate because it was about up here out of the strike zone that goes out on the first one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he's that is an important step for a young pitcher. It's like, okay, I've got my stuff is really working tonight. I feel good about all my pitches. I'm hitting my spots. Let's throw up some zeros. And I feel like he's getting there. And that's an important development. He's still going to have hiccups. Every pitcher is going to have those games where they don't have great feel or certain pitch isn't working and they're limited in their arsenal. And yeah, he's still going to have to find a way to pitch through those. But I just think what we've seen from him in this early part of the season is things are going well, and he's really taking advantage at a level that I don't think we've seen from him before.
No, I would say that's an understatement. We've not seen this level from him before. He now has a season ERA of just teetering over 2 at 2.01, a whip of 0.94, 2 runs off 5 hits in this game, 5 strikeouts, no walks. I think that's big. His K to walk ratio has been incredible this year. He not only is he fanning batters and sometimes overpowering them, but he is not giving free bases away. If you're going to get on, if you're going to contend against him, you're going to get a hit. And again, goes 7 in this game. He's also one of the few Pirate pitchers, in addition to maybe Tyler Anderson, that can go deep into a game beyond, say, the 5th inning, which is big, despite the bullpen being great, but that's important.
Well, he can go deep into a game because he was efficient. I mean, I think that they go hand in hand. Right. Like, and that's another thing is he has some strikeout stuff. There's no question about that. And he had 5 tonight in 7 innings, which you certainly take. J.A. Happ only had 3.
I guess Brubaker 5 seems like low because we're used to 7, 8, but yeah, 5 still good.
So he is a strikeout pitcher, but sometimes being a strikeout pitcher means throwing a lot of pitches. And I think he's got to work that balance between trying for strikeouts and also just putting some guys away quickly. He did an awesome job of that tonight. There was a 5-pitch inning in there somewhere. That's exactly what you want from a guy to get him to go deeper into games. And not everyone can do that. Some guys, it's just going to take them more pitches to get those outs. But that's another part of recognizing that his stuff is playing really well. And say, I don't need 5 pitches to strike this guy out. I can get him to hit a ground ball with 1. That is harder to do. But if you really got your stuff working, I like it. And I think the fact that he was able to recognize that, and he really was inning for inning with Happ. I mean, they were going back and forth. They weren't allowing very many base runners. It was a really fast game. It was like those two are playing tennis. It's your turn. It's your turn. It's my turn. It's your turn. We'll just go back and forth because we're getting all these chumps out. And to have a young guy I think Brubaker's 26. I mean, youngish anyway, but inexperienced guy is probably a better way to say it. So having the inexperienced guy go right up, and it's not like Happ is a Hall of Famer or something, but he's been
But he's been in those moments. He's pitched against Hall of Famers.
He's been in the majors since Happ was probably 10, or since Brubaker was 10. Right. So, like that's a great accomplishment for a young pitcher. And, I've put a lot of stress on Mitch Keller and how important I think his development is to this rotation. But if Brubaker, I don't think he's going to have a 2-something ERA the rest of the year. But if he can show that he can be this kind of pitcher on a more regular basis than we've seen in the past, I think that's a big step for him and for the team, because let's face it, this rotation doesn't have a lot of pieces that you feel like you can count on going forward. The better pitchers are older guys that are probably on their way out. And so to have another younger pitcher pitching well in part of this rotation alongside Keller, I think that's really important for this team and generating some momentum about what they're doing here for the future.
Absolutely. Alan Saunders, Mike Asti here, Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame. Pirates lose 2-0. J.A. Happ, again, almost throws a no-hitter. That kind of would actually have been cool if it occurred, all honesty. 9-11, the Pirates now on the season. The Twins now 7-11. And Brubaker, I'm sure, was a kid watching J.A. Happ pitch against Kershaw and Bumgarner in the playoffs and then a pitch into a World Series. Seems like not that long ago, but it was a while ago. And getting big game action against quality pitchers that have at least been around a while. You like this turn now in the rotation, kind of lining up with them moving things around recently, lining up now in this situation. It's good for him. He's going to maybe not win games, and you're going to have this type of day where you pitch really, really well and you don't win because the opposing pitcher's throwing a no-hitter. You can't figure that. It occurred today. But again, Pirate fans will hate hearing this because they are playing respectable baseball to this point, but wins and losses still don't matter much this year. This is still going to finish as mostly a bad season in terms of wins and losses. And if you get a guy like JT Brubaker to have a quality year and be that guy that can go a full season and pitch deep into games and be one of the standout forces in your rotation that's minimal and actually has been better than Mitch Keller, to say the very least, who's that other young guy that maybe you want to be part of your future, that's big, and then some. Now, Alan, though, going to the offense, because this offense has helped carry this team to victories recently. This offense has been a big part of carrying this team to wins, and that's without Ke'Bryan Hayes. It's thanks in part to Brian Reynolds and several other. Jacob Stallings has certainly been good for his position. Other guys like maybe Newman, not so much, certainly not Polanco, who we didn't see in this game. Phil Evans is somebody that was really hitting earlier in the year. He's still shown some power and contact, but he's certainly tailed off a bit. Colin Moran still providing that pop. Any concerns about certain individuals in this lineup? It now does include Todd Frazier, of course. Once again, can't get on. Once again, the action for him is not on the baseball field. And I don't know how much longer that's going to go, but of course, he's having some time now up with the big club. Any concerns about this lineup moving forward in terms of if you're going to switch it around or if you like the way it is currently positioned, and Phil Evans in particular? Has he come back down to earth, and are we seeing the real Phil Evans that may go 0 for 4 back-to-back games, then crank one, and then maybe be more of a 260 hitter than the wow factor of 320 earlier in the year and what he was doing at the end of last season?
Well, I think the lineup 1 through 4, and let's leave Frazier out of it because he's only playing because they're in American League Park, and that's not going to happen very often. Moran's the everyday first baseman, and that's, I think, even with Hayes out, I think Frazier's mostly depth. He's not going to start very often. You're going to see Gonzalez or Evans at third, and Evans, when he's not at third, playing in left. And so, whatever. He's an experienced guy. He can help some of these guys off the field. I think that's an underrated part of having a very young team, is that you do need some guys like that. And he seems to want to be here. On Twitter yesterday,
some would have thought though that
seemed to want to be here.
True.
And so that's good. Good for him. He's got to hit a little bit. I mean, he's 0 for 7. It's early, but I mean, you can't even pinch hit if you're not going to get hits at all. But look, I mean, this lineup, the way it rolls out there tonight, I mean, they already don't have a deep lineup, and then they got to go with a DH. And Newman's really struggling. Polanco not in the lineup tonight, but struggling. Defoe is not an outfielder, which I think we saw, and also is not really a guy that you should be expecting to be hitting a lot either. Stallings is what he is. He's a defense first catcher. If if he hits 250, that's a win for him.
Right.
The rest of the guys I think are hitting okay. So, can Newman be a lot better? Yeah. You
he's hitting 169. Yeah.
You get Frazier or Defoe out of the lineup when you go back to an NL Park. You get one more guy healthy, or you put Polanco back in there. Whatever. I don't know. It's not a great lineup, and I think the problem with the lineup is that there are some guys that can hit. Like Frazier can hit. Adam Frazier can hit. I think Brian Reynolds is a pretty good hitter. I think Colin Brand's a pretty good hitter.
Yeah.
But they don't have anybody that's a star. And all of those guys are going to go through stretches where they don't hit. Like Adam Frazier is probably the most consistent hitter on the team. And there was a time not that long ago, I think it was 2 years ago, where he got sent down in May because he was hitting like 163 or something like that. Like none of these guys are slump proof. I mean, no baseball player is, but these guys especially, they are not star players that are just going to be consistently dominant. And there's going to be stretches where, okay, well, if Reynolds and Newman and Frazier all aren't hitting, Pirates aren't going to score very many runs like that, and those games are going to happen because those guys are who they are. They're more complementary pieces than they are stars. And while you can do it when they're all hitting well, it takes that whole lineup. Plus, there's no power. And so, they're not going to win a game very often. Like the Twins won today where they hit 2 home runs and win the game, even though they're 2-0. Like the Pirates do not have very much power at all. They need to manufacture runs, which means they need that lineup to be connected. They can't have guys not hitting very well. They can't have Newman on the Stallings just snapped a big 0-for streak. It looks like Evans is really cooled off. Well, if you take, and then Frazier has yet to hit since he's been in the lineup. Well, if you take 4/9 of the lineup and they're not hitting, it's really hard to connect hits together to manufacture runs.
Sure. And I think people forget too, when you're looking at the big innings of, say, weeks ago, that 7-run inning for the Pirates, it's not 7 home runs. It's not 2 or 3 homers with men on base. It was Chinese water torture. It was single, maybe an extra base hit occasionally, and that produced that big 7-run inning. So this is a team that does need to dink and dunk a little bit offensively. There's not really a star there. The only player that has that star power ceiling that some expected this year maybe is Ke'Bryan Hayes, that we haven't been able to see this year, and that's already been delayed from when he was supposed to return. It would have been nice potentially to put him back in the lineup during one of either this series or the previous one against Detroit, because it's American League teams in American League Park. It wouldn't have had to tinker as much. That's not obviously going to occur. But you did hit the nail on the head. There's not a true star here, unless you think that a Brian Reynolds, who's been hitting well this year, but I don't know if I believe that in him. 2 years ago was more of an aberration. He's been great, though. You can't hate too much about him. Jacob Stallings, nothing to complain about there. I will say that some thought maybe Evans would be your designated hitter guy against American League teams and American League parks, and it seems like they tried it once, and that's not really been the case. Would you rather see him get DH time, or are you okay with this outfield thing, or do you think maybe this is occurring because whenever Hayes comes back, Evans maybe fits more into a position role, because obviously the DH is not in play in NL Parks and they wanted to keep Evans in the lineup, assuming he doesn't continue to cool off?
Yeah, I think it's just figuring out if he can be a left fielder. I mean, they're going to give Reynolds some time in center. And so if Reynolds is going to be in center, they don't have another center fielder. I mean, they just DFA'd both of their other center fielders.
They are depleted outfield-wise.
So, yes. I mean, they're going to give Reynolds some games to see if he can be a center fielder, and they're going to give Evans some games to see if he can be a left fielder, because let's face it, this season is not about winning. It's about trying to figure out what they can use as parts of a building block for a future and what they can't. They've decided that Fowler and Alfred are not part of the future. So, all right, move on. All right, what's the next thing to try? Okay, well, the next thing to try is Reynolds in center and Evans in left. And if that doesn't work, I don't know, maybe we'll try something else next. They just acquired a guy named Tom from the A's, and so maybe he's the option next. Whatever, just keep trying stuff, keep throwing stuff at the wall until something sticks. I think that's the plan for all of the sort of positions, except for the places where they've got guys that they feel like are either parts of their future or important enough that they could be trade chips later on.
Sure. And there's really nobody untouchable with the team except for maybe, of course, Key Brian Hayes, maybe Brian Reynolds, of course, as well here. But Ben Cherington has made it clear he's certainly willing to wheel and deal, make some moves. And this is really the beginning of another rebuilding process. Alan Saunders, Mike Asti here, Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on PSL. Hit that subscribe button, bottom of this video, as you're watching most likely archives, since we are still late. Although, as Alan and I were talking off the air, we are not even yet at 11 p.m. and this game did not start until well after 8. So we are winning ourselves. That's incredible. This was about a 2-hour plus baseball game, and that is one benefit of somebody throwing a no-hitter. You're going to have that game move, and move. 5-pitch inning certainly helps things. So the Pirates, who have had multiple 4+ hour games this year, get a really quick one, even though they do not win. Of course, losing 2-0 to Minnesota and now 9-11 on the year. And anything you would tweak with this lineup whenever Hayes does return? How would that impact the lineup when Hayes returns? And would you still give time to figure things out with Todd Frazier? Or if he is still failing to get a hit and just really doing his action on social media, would eventually you have to move him to the bench because you're going to have one of the best players in baseball, you would figure, with a major ceiling coming back onto this lineup at some point.
Well, I mean, I don't think Frazier's even going to start next week when they go back to National League ballparks. So, I mean, he's clearly at the bottom of the lineup, or bottom.
If he would have hit this weekend, though, do you think that would have been different? Because they could move a lot of these different guys out of the lineup. And Evans, who was hitting earlier, and I was banging the drum that he has to be in the lineup, he only has, 2 hits in the last 4 games?
I think if they thought Frazier was going to hit, it'd have been in the lineup from the beginning.
Yeah.
No, he's not one of these guys that they're throwing out there to see what happens. I think they're pretty sure what they have in him, but I do think, having a guy like that on the team is a good thing. Like, you can't have 25 middling prospects as your team. You do need.
He cranked 21 homers 2 years ago.
You need some guys that have been there and done that, and he is that. And so I think that helps, especially because as you go on in this season, I think you're going to see Adam Frazier traded eventually. Probably, I think you might see Colin Moran traded, and so there are going to be more at bats available going forward. So having a guy like that around is it's mostly a positive. And I don't think he's a guy, though, that you need to find at bats for. If he goes 2 weeks without playing, it is what it is. He's mostly there for the intangible stuff and the fact that you pretty much know you're going to get a professional appearance out of him. When he goes up there, he's not a guy whose development you're going to hurt by forcing him into positions where he's not going to be successful. It doesn't matter. Just put him out there, tell him to do whatever he can, and you'll take it. And I think that's the plan for both him and Wilmer Defoe this season.
And Todd Frazier's motivation is to save his career. If he wants to stay in Major League Baseball, he needs to do something. He needs to be a good soldier. And, of course, he does have the pop. I mean, this is a team that doesn't have the pop. And, yes, he might strike out a bunch as well and barely get on. But, again, 21 homers back in 2019. His value across the league is not great, or else he might have been picked up earlier. He maybe didn't want to be with the Pirates initially before spring training, but clearly now realizes it's his best bet. And there have been worse bats off the bench, so maybe he can help you off the bench or something. And maybe if you get lucky and he does something for you, you can bring some value mid-season or something like that. Who knows? But, yeah, this lineup's going to get opened up, and these decisions won't be as difficult once players are moved. Colin Moran maybe is that guy. Frazier could be that guy. You wonder how much longer Newman, I guess, stays in the lineup if he keeps hitting 160. But I guess
they have another shortstop I'm unaware of.
Yeah, that's the issue I was going to get to. That's the other issue, that they have so many options potentially at outfield and third base. But
maybe they could bring Cole Tucker up and try to get him 20 games, give Newman a blow. I don't know, but I don't think it's a priority. I think they're going to try to let him play.
Yeah. I mean, Cole Tucker, he's got an exciting life right now, whether he's up with the Pirates or not. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe that's not a concern. Certainly. Again, Alan Saunders, Mike Asti here as we wrap up this Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame. They lose this one as J.A. Happ. That's right. If you're just tuning in somehow, almost threw a no-hitter. That would have been interesting. That would have been cool. It did not happen. And Jacob Stallings, adding some respect to that last name, ends up breaking it up. Alan, I would be remiss if we didn't focus on the bullpen as we kind of close up shop. And I threw the tweet out there. I said it on the morning show. I will tell you, Mike V gave a full body laugh when I said this completely off the cuff initially. But the only man with less days off in Pittsburgh than you, Alan Saunders, is Sam Howard from the Pirates bullpen. Even in a game that didn't seem like it was going to go anywhere or be a win for Pittsburgh, he still gets an inning in relief. And I think it was 3 nights ago, it was his only day off in the past 2 weeks. But regardless, thoughts on this bullpen being able to keep this up? People thought the bullpen would be good, and they've had to do a lot and come into these games early. Of course, not for Brubaker, but can the bullpen keep this up would be a question. And then number 2 to that, how many pieces from this bullpen do you expect to be traded? Because relievers are coveted in a pennant race. Sam Howard, with his consistency, could be included. Many others could be that guy that a good team could say, I'd love to have Sam Howard, who pitches every day, gives you quality innings constantly, and now is becoming the leader of this pen. Can they keep it up, and how many of these guys will they keep around?
Well, I think Richard Rodriguez is obviously the one guy you could see,
Right.
being moved if if it gets to that. I think they've still got some time on Howard. I don't think they'd be in a rush to trade him, but maybe if they got a really good deal. I mean, I think he
could bring value, though.
He's got some years. He's got less than a year of service time, so I mean, he should be around for a while. And so I don't think, anybody outside of Rodriguez, or maybe if Crick came in and was pitching really well, because he does have, that sort of depth of experience and is an older guy. But I think they'd probably be more than likely to hang on to these guys. As a question whether they can keep up this hot start, I think it all depends on whether or not they can get any reliably deep performances from the starting pitching. If this bullpen is routinely going 4, 5, 6 innings, it's not going to happen. Right. If they can have outings like tonight where the pitcher goes, and I thought Mitch Keller did a pretty good job yesterday too, through, I think it was 5. Yeah. So listen, and especially you put a couple of those in a row together, it really makes a big difference for the bullpen. And the guys get fresher and they pitch better when they're fresher. And so I think whether or not the bullpen can keep this pace up has more to do with whether or not the starting pitching can take some of the pressure off them than it does to do with the actual talent level of these guys involved. Relievers are weird. Like, I don't expect relievers to keep anything up. It'll probably be 2 or 3 of these guys by the end of the year will be saying, what were we thinking, saying that guy was all right? And there'll be 2 or 3 other guys who you never even heard of right now that'll be, man, we can sure depend on Urias in the 7th because, I don't know. Like, that's how relief pitchers work, man. They're inconsistent. They work in very small sample sizes. And so I don't think individually I have some sort of like huge hopes for any of these guys, but I think as a whole, it's a pretty solid unit and they should continue to be as long as they don't get super overworked.
And they have not been overworked recently because you get Brubaker tonight, Mitch Keller recently, and then even Miguel Yajari pitched over 4 innings, almost into 5 the night before. So that's quality starts, especially off of expectations for those guys, that these members of this bullpen don't have to get totally killed. Bernard could sit down. Howard was able to miss a game. That's big for this bullpen keeping it up, but it's unlikely they keep it up like this because they've saved this team quite literally, having to come into these games in the 4th and basically all be long relievers. Who knows how long they're going to be pitching into these games. The bullpen pitching so well and the offense led them to now being 9-11. The offense has cooled off. The bullpen kept it up. So we will see here moving forward. Alan, Trevor Cahill tomorrow against Michael Pineda for the Twins. Pirates needed, obviously, to keep up the streak of trying to win series, but just in general, Trevor Cahill's been, quite frankly, god-awful. He's a veteran. Maybe you could see something happening with him and try to get some value for him at a deadline because veteran pitchers are coveted, but he has been so bad. What do you expect?
Not if he has a 9.69 ERA, they won't.
Yeah, they will not. No, that is one thing that I know for sure, that Trevor Cahill needs to be a lot better if they think they're getting anything back for him at all. But what do you expect from Trevor Cahill in this appearance against the interesting start of Michael Pineda? And can Trevor Cahill save himself to be something of value?
Well, I mean, I think Cahill was fine last year. He was pretty good in San Francisco. But it's, I mean, he's a career 4.25 ERA pitcher. So I figured at 33, that's probably close to the best case scenario. And I don't know what you get for a 33-year-old pitcher with a 4.25 ERA at the deadline. I have a hard time seeing him turn into something that is going to be coveted by someone. Maybe it does happen. I don't know. Maybe they turn him into a reliever. He hasn't always started. There was a season, I think it was a couple seasons actually, where he worked out of the bullpen. The one I'm thinking of was 2019. He was with the Angels, and he had about a half a season, maybe a little more out of the bullpen there. And so maybe that's the route they go. Maybe they give another person that, because they don't really have, we're talking about this, and, they're going to have some kind of situation because of the doubleheader the other day. Yeah. I don't know who's going to start for them on Sunday. Did they announce a probable pitcher for Sunday yet? They have not. And so they don't really have a guy in the bullpen that has that kind of typical length. Like, they don't really have a long man in that bullpen. Chris Stratton, I guess, can go, 2 or 3 innings, but they don't really have a guy. Usually you like to keep one sort of former starter, converted starter around that if you need, a bunch of innings covered, it can do that. Maybe they try to turn Cahill into that, and maybe, less is more with a guy that moves the bullpen. So I don't know. I don't think they should cast him aside just because he's had a bad couple starts at the beginning of the year, but I'm not super optimistic that he turns into something that anybody's going to be clamoring to have from another team's perspective by the end of the season.
I think that actually would pretty much be the blessing in disguise for Trevor Cahill's career, potentially, to save things and make him have more value. If he could become that long reliever, he then would be really coveted for playoff teams if he could have success there. 0-2 on the year.
He also gave up 5 runs in his first inning last time out. So, that's not –
not
what you want from a reliever either. So
right.
He's just got to be better before you can call him anything that's good.
Right. No, he does. That is something that we can agree on that I don't think anyone around will disagree on, as shocking as that is, that Trevor Cahill needs to be better. Yes, that is absolutely accurate. 0-2, a 9.69 ERA, 17 Ks, 3 walks. I guess that's okay in that K-walk ratio, whip of 1.77. Michael Pineda, 1-0, 1 ERA, so obviously not as many appearances this year in terms of starting, and that former Yankee and Mariner prospect with some hype early in his career. It'll be an interesting outing between those two, and to see if KO can finally give you something quality as this team looks to even up this series and maybe save himself as well, whether he's a starter or a reliever. He certainly needs to be a lot better. We'll see if this offense can come alive as well, how they will work the lineup, and also how the bullpen figures and who you see from that pen, since they have been able to give some members of that bullpen critical days off recently. That'll be it for this show. We will potentially see which one we have for you coming up, but we got one here in this series nonetheless. And
I think I'll have something tomorrow after Blue Gold. So I'm going to miss the baseball game, but 1 p.m. kickoff at Heinz Field, Pitt Blue Gold game. So I'll have something after that. So we'll have some post-game content tomorrow.
Awesome. So we're, again, subscribe to Pittsburgh Sports Live. You got tons of coverage coming at you there. We'll have post-game coverage over there tomorrow. And then, of course, next week's all about that NFL draft. So, again, subscribe, hit that subscribe button. It's free to do so. And hit us up all throughout the now family of networks. For Alan Saunders, I'm Mike Asti. For all of us here at Pittsburgh Sports Live, the Pirates loser. They lose 2-0 to the Minnesota Twins, now 9-11 on the year. J.A. Happ, former Pirate, almost pitches a no-hitter, but nothing doing. Jacob Stallings saves the day, but still a loss for Pittsburgh, 2-0 to Minnesota. All right. Thank you.